He barely touched him. I swear he barely touched him. And Liston went backward like someone cut his legs. I was sitting maybe 20 feet away. That little Chinese guy did something with his hand, and Sonny Liston could not move forward. 220 pounds of the most feared heavyweight in boxing history, and he could not take one step. I still don't understand how that's possible. New York City, CBS Studio 50, Broadway and 53rd Street, March 8, 1970. The Ed Sullivan Show is taping for broadcast later that night. 8 million people will watch. The studio holds 300 audience members, stage lights hot enough to make performers sweat through makeup. Ed Sullivan at his desk in a dark suit, the signature look that made him the most recognizable face on television. Tonight's lineup includes 2 guests who should never have been booked together. One is a 30-year-old martial arts instructor from Hong Kong, making occasional American TV appearances. Not famous yet, not the legend, just a man demonstrating something most Americans have never seen. The other is a 43-year-old former heavyweight champion who built his reputation on being the most intimidating man in any room. Sonny Liston was not someone you forgot. 6'1", 220 pounds of dense muscle, shaped by 15 years of professional boxing, hands so large they required custom gloves, a stare that made grown men look away. He had held the heavyweight championship from 1962 to 1964 until Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali, took it from him in 2 controversial fights. By 1970, Liston was no longer champion, but his reputation remained, the aura of menace, the unspoken threat that this man had hurt people professionally for 2 decades. Bruce Lee arrived at 6'15", grey suit, white shirt, no tie, 5'7", 140 pounds. He looked like a businessman, a production assistant. Later recalled, Lee spent his green room time doing slow, controlled stretches, calm, focused, polite. Sonny Liston arrived 45 minutes later, cream-colored suit that made his broad shoulders look even wider, hands wrapped around a coffee cup that looked like a toy in his grip. He walked with the rolling gait of someone whose body had absorbed thousands of punches. He made jokes, laughed loud, but his eyes never stopped assessing. The 2 men did not meet before taping. Ed Sullivan preferred guests to interact on camera for the first time. Better television. After the opening acts, Sullivan introduced Bruce Lee. The applause was warm but not overwhelming. Most of the audience had only vague awareness of who he was. Sullivan asked standard questions. How did you get into martial arts? What is this style? Lee answered with calm intelligence, about philosophy, about efficiency, rather than force. The audience leaned forward. Subscribe. Turn on notifications, like the video, and comment more true Bruce Lee stories are coming. Then Sullivan said the words that changed everything. Let me bring out my next guest. Sonny Liston walked onto the stage like he owned it, sat down next to Lee without waiting for the introduction to finish. The couch shifted under his weight. He looked at Lee, then at the audience, then back at Lee. Sullivan made introductions. Liston extended his hand. Lee took it. The handshake lasted 2 seconds. Liston's hand completely engulfed Lee's. When they released, neither expression had changed. Liston leaned back, spreading his arms along the couch. What do you do exactly? His voice was deep, carried authority without needing volume. I teach martial arts, Lee said. I help people understand how to move efficiently, how to use what they have rather than relying on what they wish they had. Liston nodded slowly. And how much do you weigh? About 140. Liston smiled. Not warmly. I got fists that weigh more than that. Laughter from the audience. Not uncomfortable yet. Sullivan tried to guide conversation. Sonny, you held the heavyweight championship for 2 years. What was it like fighting at that level? Liston's eyes never left Lee. It was like fighting men who wanted to take everything you had, and you had to be willing to hurt them first. That's what fighting is. Hurting someone before they hurt you. I was very good at it. The audience shifted. Sullivan tried again. Bruce, how would you describe the difference between what you do and what Sonny does? Lee paused. Boxing is a sport with rules, weight classes, rounds, referees. It requires tremendous conditioning and courage. I respect that, but it's designed for a specific context. Martial arts prepares you for contexts without rules. Liston sat up. So you're saying what I did wasn't real? I'm saying what you did was real for boxing, Lee said. But boxing and fighting are not the same thing. The audience reacted. 300 people suddenly paying closer attention. Liston stared at Lee for 3 full seconds. Sullivan's hand moved toward his index cards. Let me tell you something, Liston said. His voice had dropped lower. I've been in real fights, street fights, prison fights, fights where there were no rules, and every single one was decided the same way. The bigger, stronger man won. That's reality. Lee nodded slowly. That's what decides things when both people are using size and strength. But what happens when one person isn't playing that game? Then that person loses, quickly. The audience was completely silent. Sullivan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I don't think that's true, Lee said quietly. I think a man who relies only on size and strength has a ceiling, and when he meets someone who understands that ceiling, he discovers his advantage was conditional. Liston's jaw tightened. You think you could fight me? His voice was flat now. Not performing, just asking. I think fighting you would be unnecessary, Lee said, because the outcome is already determined by principles, not by who wants it more, by understanding, and understanding doesn't care about size. Liston stood up. The movement was sudden, final. You talk a lot about understanding. Let's see if you understand this. You wouldn't last 20 seconds against me. Not in a ring, not in a street, not anywhere. 20 seconds and you'd be done. The audience was frozen. Sullivan stood from his desk. Gentlemen, let's... Lee stood up. Smooth. No preparation. One moment sitting, the next standing. He looked up at Liston. The height difference was dramatic. 6 inches, 80 pounds. I think 20 seconds is generous, Lee said. His voice was calm. Show me I'm wrong. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Like the video and comment. More true Bruce Lee stories are coming. Liston moved forward. Closing distance. He reached for Lee's shoulder. His hand moved in a straight line. Lee shifted 6 inches to the side. The movement was so small, half the audience didn't register it. Liston's hand closed on air. The shift put Lee at Liston's right side, just outside reach. Lee's left hand came up, placed itself flat against Liston's chest. Not a strike, a touch, open palm, light contact. Less than 1 second. Liston stumbled backward 2 full steps, not because the touch had force, because his momentum had been moving forward, and the contact disrupted his balance at the exact moment when disruption would have maximum effect. Physics, timing. Liston caught himself, his face flushed red. The audience made a sound between gasping and cheering. Liston came forward again, faster, both hands reaching, going for a clinch. Lee's weight shifted onto his back leg. His body rotated 45 degrees. As Liston's hands came forward, Lee's right hand shot out, locked around Liston's left wrist. The speed was what witnesses remembered. Liston was mid-motion, committed, 220 pounds moving forward, and Lee's hand was already there, as if it had known where the wrist would be before Liston decided to extend it. Liston tried to pull free. The effort was visible. Shoulders tensed, neck flushed, veins in his forearm surfaced. He was pulling with force that had moved opponents across boxing rings for 15 years, and Lee's hand did not move, not an inch, not a tremor. Then Lee rotated his grip, a small movement, perhaps 30 degrees. He turned Liston's wrist inward while stepping to the outside of his body. The effect was immediate. Liston's entire left side collapsed inward, not because Lee overpowered him, because the angle of the wrist lock had placed Liston's elbow, shoulder and spine in a position where resistance was structurally impossible. The body cannot fight geometry. Liston went to one knee. He went to one knee on the stage of the Ed Sullivan Show on live television in front of 8 million viewers. The sound from his throat was involuntary, the sound of someone whose body is no longer responding to commands. Lee held him there for 4 seconds. 4 seconds that the studio director would later describe as the longest silence he had ever heard. Bruce Lee held Sonny Liston, former heavyweight champion of the world, on one knee with a wrist lock that looked effortless. Lee's face showed nothing, no anger, no triumph, just presence. Then Lee released the wrist, stepped back. Liston remained on his knee for 2 more seconds before rising. His left wrist was red. He held it against his chest. His breathing was elevated, from shock, from the realization that everything he knew about fighting had just proven incomplete. Sullivan was standing behind his desk, mouth open. The technical director cut to commercial. The transition was abrupt. Viewers saw Liston on his knee, then a hard cut to a car advertisement. During the commercial break, the studio was silent. 300 audience members sat frozen. Liston straightened his suit, looked at Lee once, did not speak, walked off stage, straight to his dressing room. The door closed. He did not come back. Lee remained on stage briefly. Sullivan approached, asked if he was okay. Lee nodded, said something quietly that no one else heard, then walked backstage, put on his jacket, left through the service entrance. The show resumed. Sullivan introduced the singer from Nashville, made no reference to what happened. The audience applauded, but the energy had changed. The episode aired that night at 8. 8 million people saw it, saw Liston go to one knee, saw Lee's absolute calm. By Wednesday morning, the master tape had been pulled from CBS's archive. The official memo listed only content concerns, sports liability. The episode was never rebroadcast, never included in any compilation. Within a year, when people asked CBS about it, the standard response was that no such episode existed. But those millions remembered. They called the network, wrote letters, asked questions, and were told, politely but firmly, that they were mistaken, that it never happened, that the footage did not exist. Sonny Liston never spoke about it publicly, not in any interview, not in private gatherings. He fought 6 more times before his death in December 1970, 9 months after the Sullivan Show. His body was found in his Las Vegas home. He was 43, and whatever he understood about that night died with him. Bruce Lee left for Hong Kong in 1971, made 4 films that changed martial arts cinema, became the most famous martial artist in history, died in 1973 at 32. He never mentioned the Sullivan incident, as if it occupied no significant space, just another demonstration, another moment when someone challenged what he knew, and he responded with precision, understanding, efficiency. The lesson remains. Confidence built on 20 years of being the most feared man in your field is real. Experience earned through thousands of hours is valuable. Strength developed through training is legitimate, but all of it is optimized for specific contexts, against specific opponents, using specific assumptions, and when someone appears who operates outside those assumptions, you discover what you know is real but incomplete. That being the toughest in your world doesn't prepare you for someone from a different world, somewhere in a vault that may or may not exist. 12 seconds of footage sit in darkness. CBS will neither confirm nor deny. But 8 million people saw them once, and if you find the right person in the right room, they will tell you about the night Sonny Liston went to one knee on live television, about the martial artist who barely touched him, about the moment when size and strength met something they had no training to understand, and then they will get quiet, because the part that mattered most is the part they still cannot explain. Subscribe, enable notifications, like the video, and comment below which Bruce Lee moment surprised you most.